What can we say about Kamura Kiva's Emperor form? It's just so well designed and so beautiful looking that they had to debate it one episode away before the second quarter of the series. Like what? Yeah, I think we all know this one. And I'm Tyler's Awesome too, and I'm gonna talk about my thoughts on this idea and theory in this story. Do I really have to say it like that? Sounds so cringe. Anyways, the story is that Seiji Takawa, better known in the fandom as Mr. Kamen Rider, said Kiva was the heaviest Kamen Rider suit he wore, and well, that led people to believe that that's why Emperor form was introduced so early. And basically, also people believe that there are real chains used because they just look so real. But yeah, no, that's the chain part being real. That's not true. They're just that well made to look real. So yeah, it's a YouTube video on this subject that's called Hedge on Stage. You should check out his video on this, on shed the light to why the real reason why the suit was heavy, which was basically it was actually unevenness because Kiva had this metal thing on one leg but not the other, plus maybe some extra padding on the chest piece and the shoulder pieces being a little heavy too. Basically, Kiva's movement was restricted to how the suit was designed, and especially the unevenness on the legs. And when the thing opens, it's kind of like a real tassel, and yeah. So, as he said in the video, there was translation that the chains aren't real at all, and Emperor form has no chains at all, like literally and figuratively. Like there were any real chains. I mean, there were chains, but they were fake. The chains are gone in Emperor form, basically. I mean, the back is just like the chest piece is basically is a remold of the Kiva form, but everything is brand new, more easy to move around, and so Mr. Kamen Rider can have fun kicking his co-stars in their suits. I mean, really look at him whenever Kiva does that kick. I mean, he looks real excited to be free to move around in that suit. I mean, wow. Damn. Oops, censor word. And there was another YouTube, or a thought buddy that declares if this idea is false, and well, it's just it's more likely toy sales or just some creative writing standpoint, and and the toy for Tetsuya was released 2 weeks later because some melodrama thing about Kiva's biological father being losing his memories and all that shit, and they didn't want the form debate. Like Toei Inoue just didn't want the form debate to happen in that drama in that episode. So like Kiva Emperor form was just probably better regardless of circumstance. The Sanvat sword, the weapon associated with Emperor form, yet doesn't interact with Tetsuya, the item that grants Emperor form. Yeah, but it was probably meant to appear earlier because final form weapons are associated with their the final form, obviously. I mean, yes, they did need another toy to for the sake of toy sale scheduling, obviously, but just a creative writing standpoint, I know that's a boring answer. Not exciting for YouTube videos, especially, and discussions. And plus the toy sale thing, because come on, everyone's done that. Let me just give you some examples on the creating writing decisions and toy sales from both in and outside of Kamen Rider, just so you can understand all this better. With Kamaruyuki, his final form is only a second form, so his transformation device is his final form weapon for survive mode. So very simple. Then we got Faiz, where his watch acts as the holder for his for his Excel mission memory. The thing that allows him to transform into Faiz Excel. And the watch also acts as a startup to use the power. And the Faiz Blaster is obviously its own device, entirely unrelated to the watch, and that allows him to transform into, Faiz Blaster form. Then we got Blade. He has Rouse Absorber to transform Jack in King form. His new weapon for the King form is a separate entity, and yeah, so though it's not required to transform, just those two, one device for both the super and final form for Blade. Then we got Kabuto, who has the Hyper Sector Transformers. Hyper form, only his third form. No super form, no middle form or middle form, no super form, just no upgrades, nothing. Just his final form as two main forms. However, his weapon is also the Perfect Sector is a separate entity that also debated separately from his final form. Like what happened with Kiva, which was just a creative writing decision. And also a future version of Kabuto actually had this form, and the form actually debuted in a movie first, so it's complicated. Just go watch Kabuto to understand it. Then we got Den-O, who's like Heiharu phone acts as a transformation device for Climax form, while the transformation device, which is also his weapon for Liner form, as I said, just being clear, Liner form's weapon transformation device is, the Denkamen, so. But, which can be summoned by the Keitaro, so. And sometimes the Keitaro is also used to transform into Liner form, so. Hence the complete selection modification of it, so it's more accurate, so. Yeah. It's like Nori, Kuga, Agito, Hibiki, and Decay. There's only one new toy required for an upgrade form. Decades being his final form being the only one. Hibiki doesn't need a new device. He just, does it. And then we got Agito, who just is turning form, something which we'll go back to later, which is basically just, he just combines all the other three forms. Kind of like eventually what happened with Kiva. Again, I'll get back to this. Agito's Burning Shining form have the same weapon, just use in different modes. And a piece to go on the belt and the belt changes with a separate piece that came with the weapon. Something similar happened with Kuga, where, weapon attachments for his forms, an anklet for his, Mighty, Rising Mighty, and, a piece that goes on the front of the belt to make it look different. No new roleplay items for Amazing Mighty or Ultimate form. So, yeah. With Power Rangers, while they do adapt most of the equipment and arsenal from their Sentai counterparts, they do create new arsenal, weapons, vehicles, and of course, forms. Most famous example of that being the Battleizer, which actually with Sentai would eventually start adapting in recent years. So, and also with another Hasbro property, Transformers, they also pretty much their primary goal is to sell toys, since Hasbro is a toy company, but they also make TV shows and movies. Mainly sell those toys. And also protect their name trademarks. So, again, Optimus Prime super forms, and, and also permanent upgrades like Beast Hunter Optimus Prime, or a recolor of a character who presents a new form, Megatron becoming Galvatron, etc., etc. Ben 10 also sometimes does this, like in creating new aliens, though Ben 10 also features some things that were toys before they even appear in the show. Like when they appear in Ben 10 Omniverse, like those Galvan Walkers, or those Tetra Man, those the Bisons things, or whatever they're called. Or, there's also those armored tanks and ships, or, yeah, you see what I mean. Or Ben's hoverboard, when he's a teen. At least the shape of it from Alien Force that was incorporated in the show, and Recolors was action figure. It's a thing, yeah. Yeah, easy recolor, And then there's Bakugan and how they evolve certain Pokemon, especially Drago, or Yu-Gi-Oh! With their, Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. Yeah, those are examples. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Now is the creative writing decision thing. Okay, here we go. In the Sentai crossover between Mega Ranger and Gingaman, the crossover was released after the final episode of Gingaman. So it's a post-series thing, kind of like the first Sentai crossover between the first two Sentai teams and the Renoa era Sentais. This was in fact, as you said in your video, just a creative writing decision. So that's just for the sake of changing things up. No big deal, right? Well, except it was a big deal for Power Rangers, because it was that very creative writing decision that resulted in the unavailability of the Gingaman villain suits for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Hence, they had to, use the previously unused Dr. Hunlar monster form suit into a new character called Furio, and everything else, i.e., Scorpius, Drakina, and the Stingwingers, were created entirely from the ground up. And basically, hence why the first two episodes you don't see the Gingaman villains suits at all, and why I had to introduce gradually over time. It's also, I did a video on a similar video to Doc Bunny with Kiva's Emperor form, where where he disprove a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy myth and all, with Drakina and all. You should check it out. Yeah. And the biggest effect that it had on Power Rangers Lost, on the Gingaman villains, is the character of Villamax, who is basically the complete opposite of his Sentai counterpart, Sanbash. It also might as well probably explain the show's title, since, Captain Mutiny was in the Lost Galaxy. The show's title may have been, and concept of Lost Galaxy were probably designed with Captain Mutiny as the main antagonist in mind. So, yeah. So while the decision to introduce the Gingaman villains later wasn't the creative writing decision, the situations that caused it to happen were. And then we got Power Rangers Dino Thunder, because while in Alba Ranger, Albarimo was introduced in the very first episode, but in Power Rangers Dino Thunder, they hold off on Super Dino Mode till the introduction of the White Ranger and his arc and his battle with the Red Ranger, because having Super Dino Mode debate in that battle makes it more impactful, and Connor, overpowering him, that impactful as well. Which is just a creative writing decision. And in Spider-Man the Animated Series, Sandman did not appear at all, and Electro only appeared in the final season. Because, Sandman and Electro were tied to a scrapped James Cameron Spider-Man film, and the animated series didn't want to interfere with that. Hence, Spider-Man's elemental enemy in that series was Hydro Man. So clearly not just a creative writing decision. Now back to Kamen Rider. So we see some examples like with Kamen Rider Wizard debating his first power form, Flame Dragon, in the 9th episode of his series. 9th. Earlier than any other power form of a Kamen Rider at all. Period. Like, typically they debut around episode 12. But this is episode 9. This is super early for Wizard. However, this was likely done to emphasize a new beginning for the character. And well, it just served the story better. So that's just a creative writing decision. And then we got Kamen Rider Saber, when Kamen Rider Caliber's final form debated earlier than most, being in fact the earliest debate of a Kamen Rider's final form. Of any rider at all, main, secondary, or otherwise. So debating at the 11th episode, as I said, I think. Need to check that. Anyways, this is Jowl Dragon debuted in the 11th episode of Saber. 11th, okay? Clearly it's just this was clearly a creative writing decision to give Caliber a edge, so that there can be a mean in the debate of Kamen Rider Saber's, Dragonic Knight form. And then we got Kamen Rider Kuga, whose final form is planned to debate in 30-something mark. Like most final forms nowadays. But I decided to hold off on Ultimate Form because it would just be more impactful if it debuted in the second to last episode. Again, creative writing decision. Similar thing happened in Kamen Rider Gachar with the final forms of Magite and Valvarot. Likely to better invoke upon the incoming final threat of, Galleon. Or Grayon, or whatever you want to call him. As he enters his, his new Golden Rider form. I forgot his name. Ellen. I think it's Diablo or L, just gotta check, Anyways, clearly just a creative writing decision. And then, anyways, so, you see what I'm getting at? So, if we were all to do that, and, and I didn't mention Gabato because, again, I already talked about it, so, clear was just a creative writing decision. Obviously, it does fill in that category by itself, as I mentioned it, so I just don't need to mention it again. So, yeah. I forgot to mention Fang Joker of Double actually debuted in series in episode 16 of his series after, debuting Movie War 2010. Because, it just served the story of, and plus, really shows how Philip and Shotaro had spent a year developing their bond and friendship, and how they, work together as partners, and it just it serves the development of the characters. So yeah. So yeah. My point stands. So if it really was just a creative writing decision to just debate Emperor Form, one debate, one episode, before the second half of Kiva and debut the sword separately, then how come like in the final few episodes Kiva's base form is not used in at all? Like, why? And again with the Mr. Kamen Rider's freely kicking his co-stars. There's also the fact that Dogubaki only appeared in its debate episode within the Kiva TV series, that being episode 18, and it's clearly stopped being used because, the heaviness of the suit and the, carrying those weapons. And yes, something similar happened before with Kamura Agito, where the Kit Bash form of the main forms, and Agito Trinity in Agito's case was clearly putting restraints on Mr. Kamen Rider himself, and that's why it was only used in its debate episode and the episode after that. So, Trinity was only in 2 episodes of Agito because of it, and the whole Suichi forgetting his memories, which caused him to lose the form, which, him regaining his memories allowed him to use the form, and then when Agito Trinity ever reappears, he usually doesn't have the weapons at all. So, or there's limited uses of the form or the weapons or whatever. So, Dogubaki did appear in Decade, and there's also Dogubaki Emperor in the Hyper Battle DVD. So, oh yeah, and also Kiva has a flight style, which was introduced in his summer movie first, probably because Emperor form was introduced early, and flight style actually appears in the TV series after that. So, how come Dogubaki didn't appear in the TV series after debut in Hyper Battle DVD? I don't know, because, the form is overpowered, so it puts a lot of strain on Kiva, so in the universe, that's why. I know Hyper Battle DVDs aren't canon, but, usually aren't canon, but, one of G3X's weapons appeared in the Agito TV series after a debut in Hyper Battle DVD, so, who knows? Or maybe that's because the TV writers just couldn't find a way to organically introduce Dogubaki in the TV series. Oh, Dogubaki Emperor, So, yeah. Also, probably restricted, this combat movement as well, so, that's why Emperor form got regular use. Kiva still used Emperor form. Kiva form after the debate of Emperor. It's just that the other forms stopped appearing, and and then Kiva's Emperor form. Kiva's form was probably main form was shortened after those appearances. It was not much time was spent with Kiva's main form. Even before Emperor's form, so probably, yeah. So, yeah. And basically, yes, Emperor form is used for a finisher, but finish off the bad guy, but they usually allow Emperor form just, to appear a bit before any finishers and whatnot, and, allow, again, Mr. Kamen Rider to do a lot of free movement and kick his co-stars, as I keep saying this video, and, show off all the cool stuff that Emperor can do, and, Supernova can play longer and whatnot. So, yeah. Basically, yeah. I don't know where the rumor he stopped being hunted over came from. So, might need to watch the Kiva TV series to make sure I get my facts right. So basically what I'm getting at here is basically this whole story around Kiva's Emperor form and why it debated early. So basically, unlike my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy Drakena myth video where I actually spoke to the actress who played Drakena, here we don't have direct conversation as to whatever the reason why Emperor Form debuted one episode before the beginning of the second quarter of Kiva. So, yeah, we might as well have to have Mr. Kamen Rider or the Toei Inoue or, Kiva's actor, whatever his name was, aka Wataru, we just better ask them. They probably know best. So, yeah. However, I think a good middle ground is basically Toei is that the unevenness and, unbalance and weight of the, of the Kiva's main form may have be the main reason, and Toei sales had also had something to do with as a secondary reason to why that was the case, because, basically, the fact that, the suit issues with Kiva's base form are a thing. They were just earlier than everyone expected, basically. And being the fact that Dogubaki didn't require any brand new toy to sell, is, middle form, intermediate form, basically. And now the Kiva's not missing a form. I read it on Reddit, and that there's a theory that Kiva was missing a form, and Tatsula was meant for another form that wasn't Emperor. But Dogubaki had concept art despite being a kit bash, so yeah. Dogubaki was also planned earlier than expected, so yeah. Yeah, being with those in mind, again, as I said earlier, suit issues with Kiva's base form being noticed earlier, Dogubaki not requiring a new toy to sell, it's a kit batch, and had concept art despite that. And because they had to fill in the toy sale slot for the 20-something mark, so they had to introduce Kiva's Emperor form for that, and for Mr. Kamen Rider's sake of movement, and so it can more fully move around, and the sword was introduced separately for both character development and, again, toy sales. So that's all what truly happened. Bite me. Do not question me. That's my theory. That's my take on the story. That's what happens. That's why I noted on as I said about the comment section that I posted around Thought Bunny's video. So, yeah. So, yeah. Basically, if you want to know my comment about that video, then check out Thought Bunny's video. And, as I said earlier, check out the Hedge on Stage video for the truth about about the chains, if you want to know more about all this context, then, yeah. Basically, do that, and, yeah. So basically, that's, as I said, my take on the story to why Kiva's Emperor form was introduced earlier than expected, and one episode away from the, second quarter, and, ignore my sister's voice and other background stuff. You don't need to hear that. Hear my voice. Blah, blah, blah. And, yeah. So not everything is black and white as it seems with this, story. And these are just my thoughts on all this. And I'm just saying, things can have multiple reasons, so why can't Kiva Emperor form be introduced episode 24 be that the case? be the case. So, yeah. This video's gone long enough, and, be sure to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and, hit that Kuga thumbs up button. I usually say that first, but, I'm changing it up, and that's a career decision. So, okay, I'm done. Okay, back to the usual. Slash and then subscribe, hit that notification button, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I am Tyler's Awesome too, and break the chain, and peace.